You are meant to hear this, so buckle up because this is going to be one of the most transformational and potent pieces of content that you encounter. I am coming back from the most transformative week of my entire life. This has been one of the biggest spiritual awakenings that I have ever had. I feel more rejuvenated, more reconnected to myself than literally ever before. And all of this started from hitting a major fucking rock bottom. Like, also my biggest rock bottom probably of my life before too. So much has happened, and luckily I documented every step of the way, everything that worked for me and helped me to heal. I am also a master mindset coach and neuro-linguistic programming practitioner. It's a mouthful. So I luckily was very equipped with the tools, with the knowledge, with the techniques to help myself through this and come out the other side. And I am still healing. I'm still working through this because these are big things that we're talking about. This is lifelong traumas and patterns and self-created prisons that I was trapped in for my entire life. And that finally I just got fucking done with and decided that now was the time to just burn my life down and really take the aligned action to get on a soul aligned path, because I deserve true soul alignment and true happiness and fulfillment. And maybe you're someone who is relating to me as I say this, and you're finding yourself in this place where you should be happy, but you're just not. Or you've worked so hard for something only to realize that it doesn't fulfill you. Or maybe you were like me as well and did create your soul aligned life and put in all this work and time and energy to get there. And it was cool for some time, and then it no longer felt aligned. But maybe you continued to just go with the motions of life and silence yourself little by little, ignore those intuitive nudges little by little. And then eventually they all added up and you couldn't ignore the misalignment anymore. And I know how discouraging that can feel when you're like, but I've built this life. I've done the soul work. I've done the healing. How am I back in this place again where it doesn't feel aligned anymore? And I talk more about this in the first part of this series, this conversation that we're having. I don't really know what to call it, but I will link it down below. And in the first part, I share an analogy of how a plant grows out of a pot. And so the fact that you feel this discomfort is actually a good thing, because it just means that you're growing and that you're evolving. And the only time it becomes a not so good thing is when you make yourself stay in that uncomfortable position, when you've outgrown your pot and you aren't helping yourself to move into a bigger pot and a life that feels more spacious, feels more allowing of who you really are and the growth that you crave and that you're naturally doing. So I'm sharing with you guys the steps, the things that I did and continue to do that made all the difference for me, that literally changed my life within a week, have made me more connected to myself than ever before, feel more alive, more in tune, more me than ever before. And just like this next level, intuitive, spiritual awakening, it's been insane. I'm so excited to share it with you guys because, to be honest, when I went into this, like, we'll call it a void space in the last episode, I explained it as I literally told myself it was a rehab, like a solo self-help rehab that I had created for myself. And I told myself that when I went into that, there was no expectation of when I would feel ready to talk about it or to share with you guys. And I wasn't going to put any pressure on myself to do that, because all of this is very deeply personal. I mean, this is my real fucking life. Like, this is what I'm moving through now. This is pain that I have felt, and a lot of it suffered in silence, to be so honest. And I get chills saying that because that's one of my biggest things in sharing this is I didn't want anybody else to have to feel like they were suffering in silence. And I wanted to make sure that if anybody was going through this, that they didn't feel alone. So I'm spilling the tea. I feel ready to do so. And again, I'm still in this process. I'm still in my healing. I'm still walking this all out. We'll talk about where I'm going from here towards the end of this, but I want to catch up now and just share with you what I have done so far and am continuing to implement that has given me the biggest results and made the biggest difference so that you can apply it in your own life too. So if you haven't seen part 1, you can watch the rest of this part, or you can go watch part 1 first. I put these steps in order of kind of how they came to be for me, or just how I felt it was best to explain them. And I didn't want part 1 to be too long, so that is why we are splitting it into 2 parts. But as a quick recap, step 1 in this process for me was making a commitment to feel. So feeling through the pain, feeling through whatever was coming up, not numbing out. 2 was giving myself space to really think. And 3 were the mindset shifts that really got me through this. And those 2 were, I am on divine timing and this is perfect. And those may seem just like in one ear, out the other. You may be hearing them right now and not thinking much of them, but I really encourage you to go listen to part 1 because I give you an entirely different, much deeper perspective on these mindset shifts, but I'd really more call them like paradigms, lenses of seeing and experiencing and interacting with the world from. So definitely listen to part 1 for that, because all 3 of these steps, or these pointers, these takeaways, I don't know what to call them, were pivotal in this transformation for me, and you cannot go without them. So continuing on from where we left off, number 4. This was huge for me and not something I've really done before. And that was really being focused on moving forward. So not ruminating on how I got here. And I believe for everybody, this is really different. I think some people, you do need that proper self-reflection. And that self-reflection does come and did come up for me naturally through the process of times of just naturally my subconscious mind remembering and bringing up certain things. And so I wouldn't push that down. I went through that and allowed what wanted to be revealed to me to be revealed. But all in all, I did not want to spend this time that I gave myself to be thinking about the past and thinking of all the things that got me here and all the times that I've gone through these same patterns over and over and over again, because that never changed anything. And it just made me feel shitty about still being in this situation. So I decided that I was going to do things differently this time across the board. And again, I've said this, I don't know how many times now, but what got you here isn't always going to take you where you want to go next. So although certain healing modalities or certain journal prompts or certain ways of processing things served me in the past, absolutely, for this level of healing and just being done that I was on, it wasn't going to work. And I just intuitively knew that. So rather than spending this time kind of psychoanalyzing myself or going into how I got here, other than what was necessary for me to reflect on and really get clarity on, I mostly spent my time focusing on moving forward. So getting that information of okay, this isn't what has worked in the past, and this was shitty and this sucked, right? But how am I going to make sure this doesn't happen again? How am I going to actually change this for real this time and make the changes and take the aligned actions that are actually going to make this change not just something that I talk about, but something that I actually do? And this really helped me also to not go down such negative mind spirals or stay stuck in all of the negative emotions, just ruminating on all of the pains and all the times I've been hurt and all the things that were done wrong to me. Like, I've thought through those things, right? I've thought about those things, and now it was time for me to be at cause and say, okay, but what am I going to do about them? Kind of along with this same point is that I let the processing come up subconsciously when I was ready. So something about the subconscious mind is that the subconscious mind will block things out or not really give you access to certain information, certain experiences, if you, on a conscious level, are not ready to heal that. It's a protective mechanism of the subconscious mind, and honestly, thank God for it, because sometimes looking at a certain situation or having this new perspective or remembering something can be, extremely traumatizing if it's not handled or dealt with in the right way. Now, the cool thing about this, though, is that the subconscious mind will bring up things for you when it feels that you are ready to do the work, to process it, and to handle it. So if something is coming up for you right now and is just kind of pretty persistent, and you've been resisting going into the feelings of it or exploring that, maybe that time in your life or that trauma or that situation, if it keeps being brought up for you, that means that you are ready to heal it. Of course, get any of the support that you may need, whether that's therapy or, friends and family. But the fact that it's coming up is a good sign that you are ready to process through this thing and you aren't like forcing it. Like, think about when you're a little kid and you had a loose tooth. I don't know why this is the example coming to my mind right now, but you had a loose tooth. And it was like a little bit loose and you could just fucking yank it, or you could like wiggle it little by little and then it would fall out and be less painful. Are we following here? So that is something that I applied in this healing. I don't know if I said it in this part, but I did say it in the last part that what sparked all of this was very traumatic for me, and I'm not ready to speak about it yet. But because of that, I really didn't want to like re-traumatize myself or make this any more difficult than it already was and is. So I made the decision to just let my intuition guide me in this healing and not force anything. I mentioned in part 1 as well that something else that I did was really gave myself space to think and to feel. So that meant that I wasn't numbing out any feelings, and I was able to really observe my feelings and ride them out, like let them come up and feel them, and at the same time observe my thoughts and notice what I'm thinking, and take like this two-seater position where I was both the coach and the client. So these feelings would come up and some thoughts would accompany them, and this like higher self version of me could ask like, what's coming up right now? What are you feeling? What is this, right? And dig into it deeper because it was already coming up on a subconscious level. So because it was coming up and I was feeling it, that was my invitation to go a little bit deeper. But I wasn't forcing myself to think about a certain trauma or a certain aspect or a certain thing, because there was a lot of different things going on all at once. That's something that I should probably share as well. There's been a lot, like all at once. And so I wasn't being rigid in my healing of being like, okay, let's sit down and think about this and then this and then this. I really just flowed with what was coming up and then worked through that as it came up. And what's really interesting is that it wasn't until like day 5 or 6 that one of the big pivotal reasons why all this happened and like situations, I don't know how to put it, but the biggest problem, I guess, the biggest problem didn't even really come up to be talked about in depth and really in like solution oriented ways until like the 6th day. And I didn't even notice it because I was so just like surrendered into my intuition and into just like riding out this healing in a very intuitive and natural way. But when it did come up, I kind of like giggled to myself and was like, wow, that's interesting that I guess my system knew I wasn't ready to go there yet because it was still so fresh. And I was able to look at more of these still difficult things and challenges, but that weren't so like painful for me. And it wasn't until like the 6th day that I was able to go into like the most painful topic. But doing it this way, doing it really naturally, allowed for the experience to feel, I guess, safe, very safe for me. Which was important for me because I was really in a very fragile state, in a very mentally fragile state. And this helped me to process in divine timing and in a way that wasn't taking advantage of myself or rushing myself in any way. And as I've said, and I'll continue to say, I'm still healing. I'm still moving through all of this. So there's still so much that I'm sure hasn't even come to mind for me yet because I'm just not ready to process it. And like, I can even, as I'm talking about this, I can think of one thing that I'm like, wow, I never really got to that one. So, healing is a journey. Healing is not linear. But letting yourself do it naturally, I think really, really helps. And you'll know when there's that space, that invitation for the gentle nudge, the gentle push. Like I said, the emotions were coming up, the feelings were coming up. And when I asked myself, like, what are these feelings? Why are they here? Them being tied to a certain situation or to a certain thing or person or whatever it may be, then I was able to dig in deeper. But I wasn't like sitting down with my journal being like, let's write about this trauma right now, right? I would sit and write about the trauma or talk through the trauma with myself, which we'll get into, after it already opened itself up and gave me the invitation to dig into it more. Okay, number 6, and this is such a big one, and I want to do an entire podcast episode on this, so let me know if you would be interested in that. I want to know your questions and all the things. Unplugging, like really fucking unplugging. I mean, as much time away from technology as possible. So for me, this looked like phone on Do Not Disturb. And as I mentioned, I think in the part 1, I took a full week off of work. So I was off my laptop, off my phone, completely off social media, not just for work, but at all. Like I did not want to be opening the apps. I did not open the apps this entire time and was off my computer unless I was like typing while like channeling, which is something that I like to do, and would watch TV like a little bit at night and just maybe like an hour or 2 hours before I went to bed. But that was really it. I did listen to some podcasts and all of them were very intuitive. It was like weird ways that I was led to listen to certain podcasts or even watch certain things, like certain YouTube videos, certain lectures, whatever it may be. What I did listen to or watch, it felt like so weirdly cosmic. Like it was perfectly aligned. It was what I needed to see, what I needed to hear, that helped launch me into even more healing and even more realizations and awakening and processing and self-discovery. So very intuitively consuming, I guess you could say, but fucking off social media, completely off any of the apps. And yes, that changed my life, and I'll never be able to go back to unseeing what I have seen being off of social media for even just a week. I've taken social media breaks, but like, I don't know, this one was so different because I wasn't opening the app at all. I feel like I've cheated before and I just didn't cheat this time. And it shifted my brain chemistry. Again, we need to do an entire episode on this, but a lot in my life is going to change from what I discovered and what I felt and the difference it made in my life to be not scrolling on these apps. Full episode to come on this, I promise. Number 7, this was very important and fun and beautiful and just something for all of us to include in our lives all the time. You don't have to be going through a major healing process or transformation to do this, and it's something that should be just naturally lived every day, but it's easy to get caught up in life and the motions and the ways of doing things and just not always be tapped into this. But that is just really reconnecting to me. I think something that helps with this is sometimes being alone, but also being around other people or certain social settings can be helpful. For example, for me, I did reach out and talk to a few friends. I was doing pole, so I was dancing and connecting with people at my studio a few times during this week, and just able to, the thing with pole and like dance in general is just, I feel like that's really a great way that connects me to me and makes me feel like me. So that was considered reconnecting to me, for me. But also just things like blasting my music with the windows down and singing in the car, or taking the long way home and going to this little smoothie shop and taking myself on a silly little errand just to go get a smoothie. These things that seem so small, but they're like intimate moments with yourself and just like feeling yourself, literally feeling yourself. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you feel like super confident or like the hottest girl in the world or whatever, but just like feeling like, fuck yeah, I'm me. I'm me. I'm her. Her as in whoever you are, you know? And just being with that and loving that and having that intimacy with yourself and feeling able to express yourself. Even like this right now feels like that to me, because I mentioned this in part 1 as well. Like my big intention coming out of all of this is just a new level of total realness, total rawness, total meanness, like unfiltered, not feeling like I need to change myself in any way or present myself in any way other than exactly how and who I am. And loving that, just falling in love with that. And I think being alone helps with that a lot. Being alone really helped me to like fall in love with myself and just observe my little things about me and just let it fly. Like no filter, no holding back, and not just out in public, but alone with yourself, like getting so comfortable with yourself. Another part of this, and if you're my family, if you're someone that knows me, please stop watching this right now. I'm gonna give you a second. Okay. Is self-love, like self-pleasuring, because it connects you with your body and you're able to really express an act of love the way we do with other people all the time. And it's like so normalized, whatever, but for your own self. Just for you, for no one else, for no one else's viewing, for no one else's pleasure, like just for you, you with you. That's another great way to really connect with yourself. And something that I wrote here is that being unapologetically you is true happiness. I think there's so much discussion about like next level self and being your higher self and being your best self and your dream self and all of this stuff, which is great. Like all of that is great. Yes, be who the fuck you want to be, because who you want to be, there's truth in that. There's guidance in that. There's a reason why your soul is pulling you to want to be that way, right? There's something in there for you. But I think we can get caught up in this and like overdo it or overanalyze ourselves or what we need to be or how we need to show up in order to ... right? Maybe be successful, maybe have this certain level of business. I know that that's what it was for me. It was really like this identity around how I needed to show up professionally, which yes, there is a point in that, right? Like there is a point in that, but it was just holding me back. It was making me feel frozen. It was making me feel like I couldn't fully be myself. Or also we live in this like era of like TikTok hooks and like just clickbaity or whatever the fuck. And even though I really didn't like stray into that very much, like there was that pressure of like needing a hook or needing to like draw people in, or I don't know, just I feel most myself when I'm just able to like let it flow. And that's super me. I'm very just like channeling all the time and flowing with my intuition and just letting that breathe and speak through me. And that is always when I'm my happiest. That's always when I'm my best. That's always when the best things happen to me. But I just get caught up in this belief that I don't know, I need to be somehow else or whatever. Things need to be perfect in this way. Or I mentioned in the first episode as well, like I need to have my mic set up and my filming set up, and I can't just like film in my car like this after going on a walk or whatever. Just this self-made prisons, okay? There are so many self-made prisons. I really encourage you to ask yourself, what prisons have you created that you're keeping yourself in? And they're tricky and they're sneaky and they're weird and they're things that seem so little but actually affect you so largely. And so the rule of thumb is just being unapologetically yourself is happiness, is true happiness. Because if you just flow with that in everything you do, the things will line up. And a part of that also is the aspirational aspect of, for example, you have like your next level self, you have your dream self, you have this version of yourself that you want to grow into, and these things that you want to see change in your life or change about yourself and transform. And that goes into being unapologetically you, because that's unapologetically owning the things that you want for you as well and letting yourself become them. So there's a nuance here, but there's allowing yourself to want, allowing yourself to grow, and allowing yourself just to be. And all of those existing all at once together. Which also leads me into brain dumps. I've talked about this before, but I want to share this in a whole other way that has been so powerful and effective for me. So I talk about brain dumps a lot, and that's basically just like letting what's in your mind out. So you can do this through journaling, but a way that I've been doing it that has just been so powerful for me. And I know I've mentioned this in like a really old podcast episode because I have done this before, but I did this a lot over the last week. Okay. Like this was one of the main things I was doing, and that is voice notes. Like I think that's what the app is called in your phone. Voice notes. I think so. I should know. I was like, that was the only app that I was on for an entire week. But for me, I don't know if it's because of ADHD. I don't know if it's an ADHD thing. It has to be. But especially when there's a lot going on, like my world feels chaotic, my mind feels chaotic, there's a lot happening, and I will sort of start a sentence. Let's say I'm worrying about a lot of things. I'll sort of start a sentence, but never even complete it before moving on to the next thing. I do this in my mind. So I'll like start worrying about this one thing, but then I'll worry about it in another way or a new thing. And it just gets so overwhelming. It feels like I'm drowning in my thoughts. And so a way that I process best is through speaking. So I speak out loud to myself in voice notes. And this is really helpful too, because you can go back and listen back. There have been a couple voice notes that I was just straight up channeling through them. Just not even my thoughts, just like download, not even knowing what I'm saying, but just pouring through channeling and realizations and all of this stuff. It's been incredible. It's been so amazing. I'm telling you, I've had like the biggest spiritual awakening of my entire life over this week. And so that's cool. Like I'll leave myself a note with that and say like, listen back to this, and I'll go through and listen back to them. Or if I'm saying something and my mind goes elsewhere, I don't have to worry about finishing what I was saying before. I let myself just flow, and then I can go back and re-listen and realize, okay, I didn't get to a conclusion in this point, and then come to a conclusion with it. So, and also I I love therapy, but I always feel like therapy is so short. I'm like, wait, I need more. Like, I feel like I'm just getting started. So this is nice because you don't have a time limit. It's completely free. And also, this goes with the point of connecting with yourself. This was so healing for me to just talk to myself and like hear myself talk. And it's weird because you might find, as I did, like at first you're a little like self-aware and you might even be like filtering yourself slightly, but then just the walls come down and you're able to see who you are. You're just in this flow state and the truth just comes out because you know no one else is going to hear this. This is just me speaking and this is just for me. So you're just really able to be so fucking honest. And again, with the letting yourself feel your feelings, letting yourself think, having this space, like letting intuition guide all of it. So just letting what comes up come up and following it, trusting that it's coming up for a reason and seeing where that line of thought takes you. So that's one way that I've been brain dumping. And I cannot stress how healing that has been. Like if there's one thing that you take away and do from this, do that, okay? Voice memo and just talk to yourself, talk through whatever's coming up. You don't even have to have anything that you're like, oh, I need to work through this. Just start recording and just see what wants to come up and let it flow. Something else that I did this yesterday. I cleaned my entire house and I did work that I would have done on my laptop, sitting down, just sitting on my phone or on my computer, stagnant. Like how bland is that, you know? And I think about how much time I spend doing stuff like that. And I'm just like, I don't want that. I don't want to be just doing that. So I voice noted and planned stuff and scripted things out, got my thoughts together, planned the things that I needed to sit down and plan. I just thought through it and talked to myself in a voice note. And then I also had my notepad. This fucking notepad has been with me through this, okay? Pen to paper, you guys. Pen to paper 2025. It is so healing. We're about to get into this, so one second. But had my notepad open as well, or you can have a phone note. I did that too, and would take any notes that I needed to take. So I would use the voice memos to like talk through. And then when there was a point of like, okay, take action on this or whatever it may be, I then properly wrote that down so that I remembered it. Otherwise, what I would be doing is sitting at a laptop, thinking, staring at the laptop, thinking, having that point come through and writing it down, then sitting and thinking again. But I cleaned my whole house and like connected to my space, which is another point that we will get into. And it was beautiful and it was perfect. And today I went on a walk while I got my notes, which I've been gathering the entire time I've been moving through all of this. I've documented things that I was doing that I was really noticing shifts from. That's what I'm sharing with you now here. I gathered those notes, put them in order while on a walk. And you may be listening to this and be like, yeah, I already do this, but I wasn't. And I was feeling very trapped and very like, this isn't how I want to live. Like I manifested this job to be my own boss, to my dream businesses so that I could live an untraditional life. Yet I was keeping myself in this self-made prison of, in a lot of ways, still living a very traditional life or working a very traditional 9-to-5 job, which is not what I want. But the societal programming runs so deep. And so we are rewiring that. But anyways, voice memos is so handy. We can do an entire podcast episode on this in the future. So let me know if you want me to talk more about this. It's like one of my favorite healing, channeling, intuitive, self-development, manifesting, like tool for everything. You can literally use it for everything. And I can tell you exactly how. So let me know if you want a podcast episode on that. But also I have had running notes and lists. Okay. So yours might look different than what mine were, but I'm going to share with you what mine were. I kept some in my phone and then some on paper. And basically what these were was just as this week unfolded, I would have certain realizations or thoughts or awakenings, however you want to put it. And I would obviously want to remember those. A lot of these happened during the voice memo therapy sessions, as we'll call them. I just started naturally creating these lists. Like, I didn't really set out to make these lists, but they just naturally happened and were built upon. So one that I have is, well, this one that I'm reading off of right now, which was just like the steps that I was taking and what was working, because I knew that, one, I wanted to remember it, and two, I would want to share it with you. I was channeling through actually a lot of stuff for work, but not in like a numbing out, making myself work kind of way, just naturally I was channeling so much. And so I was just naturally, intuitively channeling certain things for projects that I want to work on. And these soul aligned projects were coming to me during this time. And that's what I mean by when you surrender and you're on divine timing, you see it all as perfect. And even when you're in the shit and it's painful, but you see it as perfect and you just go with it, how actually all the doors open up for you. Like, I fully channeled through my next few projects that feel so aligned, that I'm so excited and motivated to work on. Although I did not start working on them during that time because I wanted to separate from work and not numb out through work. But now, as I get back to work, I'm like so excited to get started on these things that I channeled through during that time. So I had notes for that. I have a rules for work note because I'm just changing the entire way that I'm working, my relationship with work, how I work. Like I mentioned, even just double tasking while cleaning or while on a walk. That feels so much more aligned and fulfilling to me than sitting on my phone or sitting on a laptop or feeling like tied to a chair. I'm trying to think of how I can even podcast or like make a YouTube video while doing things too, because that just feels very aligned and natural to me. So I had a rules for work and was just writing out new things that felt aligned for me as far as work. Then I have a notes to self. So just writing notes to myself as I was thinking of things of like, you need to do this. This isn't working for you, whatever, just kind of general notes to self. Then I have this note that's called new thoughts / rules of reality / how my life is now / what I focus on. So basically what this is, and I've been reading this list to myself every single day, is just, you know, those blank spaces in your day when you just think the thoughts that you always think. These are the new thoughts that I think. This is how I see myself, see my life, what I focus on and just think about now. And anytime I find myself in those blank spaces thinking old ways that I used to think, I think how I want to think now instead about that thing that I was thinking about. I add it to this list, and then I read this list just every day, every morning, or in those blank spaces when my mind goes to old ways of thinking, and I remind myself how I think now, what my life is now, what I focus on now, my rules for reality now. So those were in my phone. Now in here, in the notebook. Also, if you're hearing me talking about channeling, I should do an entire episode on channeling because I was channeling so much, and there's so many different ways to channel, whether it's literally in your notes app, in your voice memos, in your journal, writing. There's so many different ways, and it's really finding what best works for you. For me, I really cross over. So I was doing a lot of like writing channeling and also channeling through my voice memos too. But we can do a whole episode on that. Let me know if you want more on that. I mean, I did a ton of like planning for my life, which wasn't the intention necessarily, but it just was like, that's just what was coming through. Like, this is how you live now. This is how you do things now, which I want to share with you guys all of that a little bit later down the line, because I'm still putting all the pieces together and organizing it and getting clarity. But I had a lot of lists of that sort of like plans. And when I say plans, it's more kind of like how we do things now, how I run my life and do work and approach social media or approach content or approach work or approach relationships or approach my home life. Like everything just, I think I said, I don't know if it was in this part or the last part, but I am changing my entire life. Like nothing is the same and nothing's going to be the same. But anyways, my list that I was just a running list in here, I have what I like, So some of these things were a lot about being alone, like being in my energy and like having a lot of space, having silence. So taking note of those things that I noticed that I was enjoying and that I liked and that felt good to me. I also had a list of what I don't like. So as I was noticing the things that felt good to me, or as subconscious mind would naturally bring up things to process, I would also realize things that have really been bothering me for a long time that I've just kind of like let slide or just accepted as how my life is or what's normal when it does not have to be. So I've been taking note of those things that maybe I've overlooked, but that don't feel good in my body. And when I give the space to think about them, I realize that I don't like them. So I made a list of that because, again, often we unknowingly silence these things. We just kind of keep rolling, keep going, keep doing the motions, and don't really ask ourselves, like, do I not like that? What don't I like about my life? And we just accept it for what it is rather than giving ourselves the space to recognize this doesn't make me feel good. I don't like this, and I don't have to keep putting up with this, and I can do something differently. I can change this in my life. So highly recommend doing something of that sort. And yeah, I also had a list of new household rules because I just feel like my home is my safe space. It's my sanctuary, and there needs to be rules put in place to just make sure that I keep my home, my safe space, and my sanctuary. Which takes me into my next point, and my camera's about to die, so we're gonna try to get through this. And that is connecting with my safe space, which is my home. In Scale, I talk a lot about environments. I talk a lot about containers and intentionally crafting your containers. And for me, my home is my safe space container. It's my place to fully just be. And really the number one energy that I want to create in my home, in my safe space, is a feeling of peace and safety. So if you're moving through a difficult time right now, any of this resonates with you, or you're ready to enter into whatever the fuck you need to enter into to change your life, knowing that it's not going to be easy, it's not going to be comfortable, and that's a part of change, and it's a beautiful thing, and we just got to accept it. And by accepting that it's going to be uncomfortable is how we can actually do the change. I really encourage you to create a sacred space for you, a safe space for you. And this doesn't have to be an entire home. It might be your room. It might be a corner of your room. I also created a little corner in my room that just can hold me as well, that I sat in a lot over this last week, like randomly. So cultivating like this anchor space in your home or in your environment, it can be your car even, that you can just go in, you can cry, you can scream, you can just fully be and feel, and you feel safe and held in that space. I think it's really important when you're doing difficult work to have something that just can help you feel and tap into those reminders that you aren't in this alone. You're on divine timing. This is perfect. And this is all happening for you, and you fucking got this. So having a space that can just help anchor you into those reminders, I think, is very important. Next and final point for now is asking myself, what does that look like? So after I did more of like the heavy lifting healing work, the processing, being like down for a few days, and just literally in my journal, in my phone notes, in my voice memos, and just processing and feeling and crying and all of those things, when then I started to kind of come out of that, and I started, more connecting with myself, envisioning and noticing what I want and what I don't want, what I like and what I don't like. As I was creating those kind of plans or realizations of what I like and what I want to change and my new rules for my life and so on, I wouldn't just write the change or the new rule for my life. I would also ask myself, what does that look like? And I would talk this through in my voice memos. And I would get into the specifics. So I'd get into the details and the actual actions and embodiments that I would need to take to actually walk that out. Because it's so easy to say, my home is peaceful. But when you ask, what does that look like? Then you really get into the details. Then you really get into the juice, because you're having to realize what's not going to fit into that equation anymore, or what boundaries you need to have, or what you actually need to do to cultivate that kind of environment. It's so useful for actually helping you to really make the change, because you aren't just setting these surface level intentions, you're really getting clear on how you're actually going to walk this out and make sure it actually becomes reality. So where I'm at now. Right now, I am still healing, still processing, and I'm really mapping out a new way of life for myself. And I don't even know what that fully looks like yet. As you've seen, I have a lot of notes, I have a lot of ideas, but where I'm at right now in this process is continuing with the feeling and the healing and letting that come up as it does, continuing to really connect to myself and anchor into myself and my energy and my soul alignment, and take those aligned actions to really walk that out. And I'm organizing my thoughts as far as the changes that I need to make and what that actually looks like, and getting really clear on all of that so nothing's left up for question. I really am supporting myself to really make the changes that I want to see happen, and crafting this new life for myself. So I will keep you guys updated. I'm excited to update you when I have the clarity on that, because my relationship with work is going to change, my relationship with social media, my relationship with life, my relationship with myself, every single thing I am changing. And yeah, I'm really excited to be able to bring you along for this in real time, because the first time I went through all of this kind of like massive life upheaval and transformation, I didn't have a platform, or I didn't have this any way to share it, or I didn't document it really much either, other than in my journal, I guess. But this time I can, and I'm so excited to do that. So hopefully, maybe not next episode, but to come soon, I will be updating you on my new sort of ways of living and playing and interacting with life. With all of that, be sure to follow along here, subscribe, follow the podcast, because I'm going to do so many more audio only episodes. Follow along on Instagram and TikTok. I'm going to be doing series off of this. The content I want to create now is just so aligned, like what I'm actually doing, what I'm actually moving through, and just be so fucking for real. Everything real. Not that it wasn't real before, but I'm just excited to share this journey in real time with you guys. So I'm going to create some sort of series where I can have that sort of anchor point on social media to keep you guys updated and know what's going on, and obviously help you guys as I help myself too. So be sure to follow along everywhere for all of that. Like, subscribe, comment down below, and let me know if you're in this with me, with us, because I know that I'm not alone. I know there are some of you watching this right now who are relating to this, who need this. So let's just spread love to everyone in the comments. If somebody else is moving through something that maybe you relate to, maybe it's a breakup or a change of career, whatever it may be, like, connect with each other in the comments. Let us know what you're moving through so that we can all let each other know that we are not alone. We are not alone, and this is life, and this is perfect. So I'm so thankful to have you join me here today, and for you to be a part of this journey with me, and for me to be a part of your journey with you. Thank you for joining me here, and I am excited for this new chapter. It is scary, it is unfamiliar, it is new, but I'm excited. So be excited for your new chapter too. We are in this together, and I mean that so much. Okay, my camera's gonna die. So with all of that, I am sending you so much love, so much good fucking energy, and I will see you next time. Bye.